What is up, guys? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today we're going to jump into 3-bet pots, reviewing some of the most interesting hands from the PLO Cash Game World Championship. Today we're going to review not hands that I played myself, but some of the best players have played in the World Championship. We have a selection here of, I think, 11 players that I played with. And we're going to look into some of their hands. The cool thing, obviously, about the championship is that we are able to see the whole cards if the player in question won the hand with or without showdown. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So obviously, there is a ton to learn from that. And we're going to jump back and forth between the hands over here and hand to note. And then the newly designed PLO Trainer. So as you can tell here, I am on the table on the left-hand side, but I'm actually not going to be involved in the hand. Some of the hands I will be involved, obviously, but it's not going to be the focus of today's session. Today's focus is going to be to learn from others. We have a selection of 11 players that I carefully have evaluated. And we're going to head into that just now. So I would say, without further ado, if you guys have any questions about 3-bet pots in position or the way PLO Trainer works in order to review those spots, then let me know in the chat over here on Twitch, and obviously on YouTube. Let me just arrange things here a little bit. Okay, here we go. So here's an example hand. We have an under the gun open. We have Gurkhan, very good player. Goes ahead and 3-bets, and his opponent calls. The flop is Queen 7-5. And we have a check from early position. So in this instance, it's going to go for a pot size bet on this board texture. And sizing in 3-bet pots is very sensitive to the texture. Texture and SPR, you can say. Let me lower the music a little bit. Okay, so I think this is better. Yeah. So in this instance, he's going to go for a pot size sizing, and we're going to look into that right away with the trainer. So Queen 7-5 is right there. Queen 7-5 is not necessarily a board that is amazingly good for in position. It's not going to have that many 2 pairs or sets. So we can see here a frequency of 33% is used for betting and only pot size. So this is a sim that we call the framework sims, where we only use a single bet size solution for the 3-better. And in this case, it would be potting only. And if we look into the equity distribution graph, we will probably see that even though we do have the advantage because we have all those aces, we do have a bunch of hands that probably want to check back instead of getting the money in. So it's already kind of a tricky spot. If you have ace, ace, queen, 7, it's not really tricky because you know you want to get the money in. And you also know you don't want to play a 3-street game where you're going to see turns and rivers and then have to deal with the board changing cards. So it's pretty natural to just jam this hand, but I think at lower stakes you see people using a different sizing. And that is what gets them in trouble. So in this instance, we do see a pot size bet and a fold, and the hand is getting taken down. The next hand is a bit of a spicy 3-bet. We have the ace, jack, 9-9. Let me actually bring up the preflop solution for this spot. I do know that ace, 9-9, ace, jack, 9-9, even single suited, is actually a frequent 3-bet. I'm just doubting a little bit the positions, but I might very well be wrong. So these guys are basically 100 big blinds deep. Going to go right over here. These are the Cash Game World Championship ranges. Under the gun opens, 3-bet frequency of 5.5%. Ace, Jack, 9-9. Ace, Jack, 9-9 is probably a little bit too good to call and too weak to 3-bet. Although we do see that Ace, Jack, 9-9 with a low suit is actually a GTO 3-bet, which just shows you like how aggressive Ace, Jack, 9-9 is somehow playing. Now, if you miss the ace jack 9-9 3-bet and you just fold, it really doesn't mean much for your win rate because the EV is so low. But it is going to be a 3-bet pre-flop with the low suit. And then with a high suit, the nut suit, you can just call. But really not that much of a difference. The under the gun player calls, and now the flop is 9, 8, 7, which is, if you disregard the hand here, obviously a terrible flop or pretty bad flop for the 3-better. The 3-better has an extremely tight range pre-flop, 5.5%, which of most of them are aces or something close to it. So this board is going to be led very often from out of position. And in this case, the villain is using a small sizing. I think this makes a lot of sense. He can just lead. The smaller sizing allows him to just lead with a wide range of different hands, bluffs, and really good hands and get called. So here's the solution. So 9-8-7 out of position here in this instance has a half pot size sizing, but you can also go for a third. And with a half pot size sizing, he can lead 71.5% of the hands. So again, it's another spot where in lower or mid stakes, you might see the guy that called the 3-bet to just check the flop with full range, or maybe lead something like 25% of the time. But in reality, this guy is supposed to lead a lot more often, 71. Now we can compare this and see how this would change if it is cutoff versus button, where the button has more connected hands and not only aces. So we're going to change the positions here. We're going to say post-flop 3-bet pot, where we have cutoff versus button. And the flop is like this. So in this instance, we do have a 57-58% lead frequency. So in position has a few more straights, a few more sets, a few more 2-3 pairs. But still out of position wants to lead the majority of their range. And against the MP3 betting range, it's even more pronounced. Also realize some of the weaker ace-high hands are just going to be folding pre-flop in the shoes of EP. So what remains is a ton of connected stuff. So this is an interesting spot, like learning how to lead here properly. So I'm going to just quickly jump into a bit of training right there. And I'm going to use a 15-second time bank, and we're going to learn how to lead the flop. So basically, because you're leading so often, you can lead a wide range of different hands. Yeah, I was about to say, maybe this one is not a great one, because when we get ripped or even just called, the way our equity will change is not really positive for us. It's very hard to create a hand by the river with this hand that actually wants to shove for value. So this is actually one of the few, not necessarily traps, but stronger hands that we want to check, because they lack making the kind of hand that you want to have by the river to jam. I mean, usually you're going to have bottom straight. And obviously sometimes you make a boat, but it's pretty unlikely. You don't even have a backdoor flush draw. 8-6-6-4, I think we're happy leading with this hand because it can't check call. It's more of a straightforward bluff. This makes sense. King, 6 deuce. I mean, not really, right? We have a 6 blocker. So probably best to just check. So king, 6 deuce also wants to lead and basically bluff. That's going to be very spicy to see how that hand is going to continue on the turn then. I want to study this spot. I wonder, let's see, if we do go into... This is cutoff because here we have turns. So if we do lead king, 6 deuce and get called, I mean, what is the plan if the turn is something like a 5 of diamonds? Is to check. So what is the idea behind leading king, 6 deuce? Because if the turn is, let's say, a 10, we just really don't have the kind of hand that wants to do anything, I feel like. Oh, really? I suppose we're gonna make some aces fold, but we're not looking at a multi-street barrel plan. We can make some weaker hands call sometimes, I suppose. So pretty unintuitive lead here on the flop. Back to the hand though. We do see a lead by the out of position player, and we see a call. I do wonder if raising is a big thing here. So in PLO Trainer, raising happens only 1% of the time. Because your range is in such a large disadvantage and your opponent already starts leading, you're also in position, you're just going to go ahead and call whatever you have. And in this instance, we do see a call. The turn is a 3 of hearts. We see a half pot size bet. Obviously, Gherkin has an easy call. He could definitely have the best hand at this point, and also he can make the best hand. Call again. River's a 10. All in. I mean, you make a jack high straight. You're not going to fold, although you would ask yourself, like, what hands can I beat that takes this line? We could look into a comparable by looking into cutoff versus button. So say it goes half pot size call, the turn is a 3. It goes setting up a river jam. I think there's no jams here in position. It's a very static turn card. I mean, the turn is actually bringing in a flush draw, so it's more like a 3 of a flush card, something like this. No, not this one. Do we have a 3 that brings in the flush? Yeah, this one. So 1/3. Do we see some jams? Yes, because a flush draw was introduced. Ace Jack 9/9, I feel like, is benefiting much more from calling because we are quite far behind the straight and we're very far ahead of the bluffs, or quite far ahead. And then the river's a 10. Really any 10. And it doesn't, I mean, it's not a foldable spot. Out of position jams. All jack high straights call. And we can now go to out of position and see what hands are actually bluffing. So what if we don't have a straight? Straight is STR. Yeah, so what are the bluffs here? Jack, Jack, 6-6, very natural. Queen, 10, 10, 8. So is that a value jam? That's a weird one. We see a lot of jacks, makes a lot of sense. We see a lot of jacks. We see some queens, makes sense. Queen, 10, 9. So what is Queen, 10, 9 doing? Trying to make a lower straight fold. Maybe a 10 high straight. You can type in Queen, 10, 9 and see what the equity is at the moment. So Queen, 10, 9 arriving on this river has 25% equity. And it looks like we want to fold out a lower straight. Maybe a set, like a set of 8s, set of 7s. And I'm pretty sure the player in position will have to fold some of the lower straights. So if we go into a hand that is the third nut straight here is going to fold 37% of the time. Top set is not folding, but middle set is folding 69% of the time. I mean, it's a very specific bluff. Let's see what other bluffs are out there. Because it's not super intuitive to like find bet jam here. We're looking at this board in case you guys are just tuning in. So basically what happened is it's a 3-bet pre-flop, and then on the flop, the EP player is leading, getting called, is leading, getting called, is jamming. And it is a spot where out of position has to be pretty creative to bluff. And in PLO Trainer, we can see that the combos that are bluffing are actually, for the most part, 2 pair that I don't think almost anyone would be bluffing. So Queen, 10-8 or Queen, 10-9-7. Obviously, there are a bunch of jacks in there. Ace, jack, jack, queen, queen, 10 deuce. You're basically going to have queens and jacks to be bluffing here with, and then you're going to turn some of your two pairs into a bluff. Obviously, king, queen, queen, 10. Some spicy king, jack, deuce, deuce. Queen, queen, 9, 8. Again, some weak two pairs. King, jack, 4, 4 makes more intuitive sense with a busted flush draw. It certainly does require some creativity there. Queen 10 10 9 is not as strange because of the frequency of 9 combos, and yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, top set as opposed to like the super merge value jam. King king jack 6 makes sense. So it's certainly a spot where you have to be pretty creative to find the right amount of bluffs there for the player out of position. And in this case, it is not a bluff. It is the absolute nuts flopped, turned, and rivered. And Gurkhan is losing a significant pot there. But interesting hand pre, and then flop, turn, river, I think plays itself from all parties. But again, it is a spicy spot for out of position to find the right bluffs. This is blind on blind. It's not something that I want to go into today. Let's have a look at this hand. So we have a under the gun open by Quincy. Sages, also in the list, is going to be 3-betting the ace, king, jack 10. This is a hand class that doesn't really enjoy going multi-way, but it has strong blockers to the 4-betting range. That being said, I do wonder in this challenge, in this format, if we do actually want to 3-bet against under the gun because we already have guaranteed position. So let's have a look. Ace, king, jack 10. And it is, in fact, a 3-bet. If we want to isolate to a non-nut suit, it would be single suited. Well, we don't have the nut single suited. No, that doesn't work. Our hand is single suited. Actually, all single suited hands are 3-betting regardless anyway. It's only when we are trip suited that we are not. So I imagine this is going to be a hand that 3-bets and then folds against the 4-bet. Our fold frequency versus 4-bet is 27%. And in this instance, this hand is obviously a fold against the 4-bet. So the idea here is to 3-bet pre and fold against the 4-bet. We get called. The flop is another terrible texture. So 8-7-6. I mean, the board where Jack 10 was making the straight, I would feel has more leads than 8-7-6, but we still are going to see a lot of leads here, I would imagine. So let's see. 3-bet pot. EP versus button. So out of position leading 80%. It's even more actually. Oh, that's interesting. I suppose in position does have less straights now than on 8-7-6. Sorry, a 9-7-6. 9-8-7. That was it. So almost full frequency lead for under the gun. Can just really punish and bet half pot here. And that's what we see. Quincy leads. He's going to use a small sizing. In the PLO Trainer seems to use half pot size. And this small sizing on straight boards is something that has been used pretty commonly like throughout this challenge. Could think about like adding another sizing, another sim set with a 1/3 sizing. But regardless, the range is not going to change that significant on the flop. You're leading basically almost all of your range. And then against the third, I mean, with the nut gutter backdoor flush draw, we definitely have a call. And I wonder if that's also true for half. So ace, king, jack 10 is also calling here, even against a half pot size lead. So we call, trying to make a hand. The turn is an absolute brick. It's the queen, and we do see a check. So this is where things get a bit spicy. Out of position, obviously, on this brick can definitely start polarizing and keep betting. And we can see there's only a 25% check frequency. You can also merge bet the turn probably a lot. You can see here 2 pair keeps betting on the turn 87% of the time. And then one pair bluffs 62%, draws 43%. So a bunch of continuous bluffing, 4 out of position, and then some checks, some give ups, some check calls, I suppose. But a ton of continuous aggression. However, in this case, again, we do see a check from out of position on the queen, and we end up with ace high. So is it time to bluff? I would imagine we're not going to see too many bets here. Actually, half of the time we're betting for 1/3 here. I was just thinking we don't have a great hand like that often. So our check range actually needs to be quite protected. We see a set is only betting 41, 57, 62. In this case, we actually have air, and you can see that air here at the bottom is actually betting super aggressive. So the draws mean we just have a straight draw, no pair, nothing. And they're betting 86% of the time in position. So that's our main bluff, which is exactly the hand we have. And Sages doesn't miss that and bets. Half pot here on the queen. So actually, looking into the sim, we're basically betting pretty much all these combos here, 82%. And our opponent calls. So at this point, we can't really love it. The river is a 10. So Jack 9 gets there, 10-9 gets there. We have just a 10. And we see a check. So we don't have the best hand at this point, obviously. So the question is, are we going to barrel? So let's see. We bet, we get called. The river is a 10. I mean, given that we 3-bet pre, it's pretty hard to have a weaker hand on the river, to be honest. So all those hands are going to jam in the sim. So basically, they're putting in a bet and bluffing. And in this instance, we do see a pot-sized bet on the river or a jam. So it's actually a completely correctly played hand. Pre-flop correct, on the flop correct, on the turn correct, and on the river as well. Very, very clean hand. I'm going to put that into this tag here. I'm putting together a list of interesting hands to review later on in the mastermind with more sims and a bit more time and concepts. Yeah, in real life, 99% would be a mistake to shove queen 10, 10, 8 and the big one. Yeah, I agree with that in this previous hand. And in this instance, we do see a fold. All right. Just going to head over to the next hand. Give me 1 second. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Let's continue. It's an interesting hand also because if you play lower stakes, people are not going to lead as wide and weak on the flop. So that is going to lower your chances of success on the turn in the river. But at higher stakes, out of position knows here, they can just lead whatever they want and then take it from there. So, interesting hand. Next hand, here we have a raise by myself. Oh no. Here's a 3-bet and I call. Pretty standard with the aces. I think in this position, very few aces are going to call. Let's have a look. 14-15%. So actually my opponent has the kind of aces that could go ahead and flat here. No, actually a single suited low suited is also a 3-bet. The EV difference is 22, which is reasonably significant. And if your opponent has a wide enough 4-betting range, you definitely want to take advantage of that and hope that, you know, I have a hand like Jack 10, 9, 8 or something, double suited and 4-bet. Anyway, on the flop, we see a half pot size bet. On 3-3-6, in position can size up because I have so few threes in my range, and I'm just going to be... It's pretty difficult for me to continue. Like, he can value bet aces for a large sizing, no problem. He can get the money in on this board, no problem. So I go ahead and make the call. Turn is a queen of hearts, another check. And so now the question is, do you want to just pot, especially with the low suit, or you want to go ahead and bet smaller? I don't think check is ever an option. Your hand is just way too strong. I just don't have a better hand nearly enough often here. But there are a bunch of weaker hands that I can call with, for sure. So we see a pot size bet in this instance and a jam. Okay, that's an interesting hand. Now I'm really curious what I have. First, let's look into the actual sim there. Now I am very curious. So we have a spot between MP and cutoff. It's a paired board that is two-toned, preferably 6 high with turns. Okay, we don't have that. What about 5 high? None of these have turns or what? Any turn? No, we're going to have to run the turn ourselves. Not a problem. Do we have 6-3-3? We don't have 6-3-3, but something similar, maybe 6-2-2. Yeah, so here's this. And then here's the call. However, the ranges are going to be a little bit different because of the wide ranges of the challenge. But still fine. Let's have a look how this hand plays out first. So I jam on the turn, and he's going to call, obviously. And I ended up having King, King, 10, 7 with the turned hearts. And we got it in, unfortunately, with 20%. And I guess, luckily, getting out half the pot. So this is a very tricky spot. I don't really see a way we can fold, though. It's just a pretty unfortunate situation there. I mean, there are plenty of like bluffs you can have for sure around the flush draws, maybe with a straight draw. Sometimes he might have a queen and a flush draw as well. And we're in really good shape, but for the most part, he's going to have aces. And I suppose he's going to have aces with a flush draw a good amount of the time as well. Which doesn't sound great. On the turn, we have an SBR of 1.5. So we need around 36% equity to get the money in. And if you run into something like this, we were looking at 20. So that's like far away from it. Yeah, I don't think at all it was an RTA fest at all, because the frequencies of all the top regulars are still extremely different from each other. They played very different, you know, it's a lot of different styles. And I looked at a ton of frequencies, and it didn't look like RTA at all. Also, RTA is pretty difficult in PLO anyway, but it's the way people played the game is just so different from each other. I'm going to mark this hand and review this later more properly. Yeah. Let's move on to the next one. This one could be interesting. Under the gun raise, 3-bet call. King 9-8. These are some of those weird spots. SPR 2 this time because the player is shorter stacked. So probably with an 8 blocker and a diamond blocker, some of the king-king combos should be removed. We're probably going to see a pot size bet here, and we do. And here is a jam. and the guy shows up with king 9. What are you going to do? Not necessarily a hand I feel super strongly about reviewing, just because it's against a short stack. Here we see another very strong player, Sorvian, coming in with a 3-bet against Venom. Gets called. This is a very dry texture. You're going to see a lot of pot size bets, and Sorvian is not really looking to get the money in. I mean, he's going to be potting, I think, just because that's how the spot kind of plays. But it's not really clean in the fact that he has no backdoor flush draw, I guess. But I guess it's the only solution really here because of the dryness of the board. So he's going to pot Venom with the jam. You need around 33% equity to get the money in. You're hoping to, I mean, even if you see 10-6 or 6-3, when you see 10x with a straight draw, like all these hands, you're gonna have plenty of equity, and sometimes you're ahead. It's just that when he has a set, you're obviously in terrible shape. But yeah, you got to get this in now. And he runs into top set, no mercy. So this is going to be an interesting one to review, because there is going to be a threshold at which point you don't want to pot the flop anymore. I don't think the threshold is reached here, 112 big blinds behind. Obviously, if you look at a standard spot, so if we look into the 100 big blind example, this will be very straightforward. We have a 10 high board, say for example 10-6-4, and the MP range will just not connect well enough. The only sizing choice is pot. Actually, not all aces are potting here. You do need some blockers, some equity. If you have ace, king, queen, 10. So with the top pair, actually, 10-6-4 is better connected than 10-6-3, obviously. But this is 100 big blinds deep, and as you can see on the left-hand side, when we have hearts, or no backdoor flush draw, say, we're not going to bet and get the money in. We want to see the turn. So this is actually an interesting sim, or an interesting hand that we looked at, because it seems like from this sim that you might actually not want to put the money in, and you preferably just see a turn. But it would require running the sim on 10-6-3 on a different board texture. Sorry, on 10-6-3 on a different stack size. So because they're deeper here on the flop and the SPR is larger, so my hunch would be that this is actually a check back spot, and you're a bit too deep and a bit too weak with the non-backdoor flush draw to get the money in. But it's tough, because potting is still going to be profitable because you have so much fold equity. And again, when the money goes in or you get called, you still have a lot of equity. It's just that most likely checking back is more preferable. Mark that the hand, look at it later. Over here, we have the same player with queen, queen, 10-8. Nice hand pre-flop, especially during the challenge. We have wide ranges in play. We're going to see a 3-bet. And this is a hand that can call a 4-bet. So quick look into the pre-flop solution here. So these are the sims from the championship. Queen, queen, 10-8 is 3-betting here. And the EV difference is not massive, but when the solver decides to 3-bet a pair in position, a double-suited pair, then usually it's because those hands can call a 4-bet. Otherwise, you would usually see a call. The only exception is going to be when you have an ace in your hand and you have such good blockers that you're fine with 3-bet folding. But a hand like pocket queens or pocket kings or pocket jacks that are double suited, they only 3-bet when they can call a 4-bet. Otherwise, they would just flat. Because you're not blocking the 4-betting range, holding no ace, so therefore you're going to get 4-bet more often by bluffs and by aces. You want to make sure you can realize your equity when you 3-bet a good hand like this. So in this case, we do see a call. And the flop SPR is somewhat low. Queen, queen, 10-8. Obviously, we have a good enough hand to get the money in. We have a double gutter. We have a flush draw. We have pocket queens. There are some scenarios where we're going to be completely crushed. Obviously, ace, king of clubs. But I'm interested to see how this is going to go. I would say on this texture, you don't necessarily... I mean, you could play full pot in the smaller sizing. My hunch is that based on how Sorvian plays, he might just pot the flop, but let's see. He's going to check back. Okay, that's very interesting. He's going to check back and keep the range as wide as possible. Basically position this hand as a trap because he doesn't want to get it in against the better flush draws with a better pair. I would think in the trainer, this is going to look mostly like a 1/3 pot size bet, and then our hand, I'm not sure in which category it would fall. I mean, it's going to make good money in either category. So this is going to be, I'm going to use cutoff versus button because it's more appropriate for like the way the ranges are constructed in the challenge. So king 9/6 two-toned, where the king is not the flushing card. Out of position has certainly some leads here, 30%. Healthy lead frequency. You could also think that maybe the field is not leading enough here. And then 1/3 for in position with a polarized range. And maybe that is also why the queen, queen, 10, 8 might not be in there. We do have the flush draw, but we don't have the backdoor flush draw. Yeah, it looks like this hand is strong enough to go ahead and bet. But the EV difference is very marginal. So it could be an opponent-specific adjustment where you want to check back and kind of trap. And it could also be that you can also think of it as in like which line is going to be easier for me to play with my specific hand. Whenever the EV difference is really close, it means that both avenues are kind of open. You can play both ways. Obviously, if we do bet the flop for 1/3 here, we're never folding against a jam. But we do invite some 7/8s in the mix, some 9x in the mix, some marginal king x in the mix that are going to call the flop. And we have a lot of playability. We can turn a flush and check back and slow play. It depends which card turns. Or we can turn it straight and maybe our opponent leads out of position. There are a bunch of good stuff that can happen in the betting line and also in the checking line. Turn is a 6 of diamonds. I mean, that's not, we don't love it. However, we're also going to have a bunch of aces or ace a6, so not too concerned so far. But I think on this hand, on this card, we are not going to bet because a lot of weird stuff can happen. We bet and get raised, we bet and get called by usually just better. So what's the point? Check, check. River is a jack. So this might have played a little bit easier if we bet the flop. Now it's a weird run out. And we see a pot-sized bet. So, I mean, I would think out of position still has king-king. Out of position has nut flushes. I don't think a hand weaker than the nut flush is really betting this way that often. As for value. And then there are some bluffs. So, like, what are the bluffs? Maybe jack-9. Although blocking the boats is really not as relevant, I would think. It's more about blocking the flushes. Because we're not saying we have a boat. We're saying, hey, if we call, we probably have a flush. And so blocking a boat, I would say is, I mean, you block jack-jack that I rivered, but it's probably all around the diamond blocker. So in my, like, I would just fold my hand because I have no diamond. And also on a secondary note, I have no blocker to the boat. But Sorvian just calls. So that's a pretty interesting line. Can't really see that being approved. So this is the thing. When you do check back, difficult stuff like that happens. I'm going to mark this hand as well. Let's see the outcome first of all. So King Jack without a diamond turns itself into a bluff. Don't like that at all, I would think, because blocking the boats is not that relevant for just a single bet. Should this player lead the turn maybe and start representing kings on more runouts? I would say that would be more appealing. Like if this guy leads the turn with this hand, first of all, he has an easy fold against the jam because he has no flush draw, so that's great. If he checks and faces a bet, he just can't continue with this hand, I would think. It's just such a bad hand on a 2-flush board. And if it does go check-check on the turn, it doesn't really feel very attractive to bluff a jack, for example, because it's not really about blocking the boats. That's how I would think about the spot. I mean, I would still fold Sorvian's hands without a diamond, but this is pretty interesting. Maybe he picked up on something. I was thinking this guy is like playing a king too aggressive, or a king jack too aggressive, or a jack nine too aggressive. Let's see if I can run a sim here. So if you find a sim in the mastermind like this that doesn't have a specific turn, you can just click on this check button and it downloads the script. And then as it downloads the script, you can just automatically run a sim. I'm just going to do this right now. I mean automatically. It's going to put the inputs in automatically. I'm going to show you how this looks in a second. So we're going to go here. I open the file, and it just automatically, without using the hands, magically puts in the right inputs and the right board. This is an automatic script. And so here we have the right ranges. And then so for the turn, we're going to use 33. Something like that. Just going to run this turn sim for a second to get some ideas. The field underdogs king 9-6 and overprobes turn. Yeah, I would agree with the flop specifically. They're probably not leading enough. I miss watching your YouTube videos. Just head over to YouTube. You can, well, if you mean the old ones. I mean, I uploaded a bunch of new ones and also like live plays and whatever. If you want to see a lot more of that, then obviously check out the PLO Mastermind. In there, I have over 100 videos. So here we're looking at the turn sim. Out of position is going to have all these different options to lead in terms of the sizing: 1/3, 2/3, full pot. Is it possible that the king, queen, jack 3 without any flush draw has interest in leading? No, it's just too weak, it looks like. What about the flop, by the way? So on the flop, if we had something like this, for out of position. There's a 30% lead frequency on this board. King, queen, jack 3 without diamond, without spade. I mean, it's probably not. It's just too weak without the flush draw blockers. We're just going to check. And then it looks like on the turn, it's the same story. Our equity is just too bad. So the river brings in the backdoor flush draw, which would be the jack of spades in the sim. It goes check. Queen, queen, 10, 8 with the front door flush draw. It's not really in our sim because it's supposed to bet the flop. But anyway, it goes check, check. River is the jack of spades, and if we have this hand here, the king, queen, jack 3, or let's say yeah, the problem is if we have king jack without a diamond blocker, it looks like we are not really interested in betting very much. Although the sim is still low accuracy and is sort of converging here. Oh, sorry, we don't have a spade. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. We're not going to put in a bet. This is all going to go into the check line. We also have no diamond. I mean, this block bet here is basically a value bet because against 1/3, aces is almost never folding. But ace king, I suppose, could call. It looks like, from what I can tell so far in the sim, that basically the river seems to be just like too aggressive because you want to block the river flushes more so than river jack-jack or slow played king-king. You're just, first of all, you have some showdown, and then secondary, you don't block any of the hands that will actually call, like aces with a diamond blocker or the actual flush. That being said, I don't think the hand can be a call. That actually was getting called there. Let's see. So it goes check, check. The river is this card. There's a pot size bet. And we have queen, queen without aces, without a spade. It's not going to be a call. Oh, the volume of the microphone. Let's see if I can change that. Let's see if we can do something here. Okay. Okay, I just increased the volume of the microphone. Don't be surprised. Is it better now? So it goes check, check. The river is this card. There's a pot size bet. And we have queen, queen without aces, without a spade. It's not going to be a call. Oh, the volume of the microphone. Let's see if I can change that. Let's see if we can do something here. Okay. Okay, I just increased the volume of the microphone. Okay, yeah, this sounds much better. So this is definitely street poker here from both players. Out of position should not bet river. In position should definitely not call, but we do see the call, the soul read by Sorvian. Next hand, we have ace jack 10 9, Kumikon open, Sorvian with a 3-bet. This is a hand that wants to 3-bet fold, pre-flop. Doesn't want to go multi-way given the lack of the nut suit. Do see the call, and we flop the nuts. We've seen this board before, very high lead frequency for out of position, for half pot or third. In this case, no different. And then in position, because the board is rainbow, has no raising range, it's just going to call. At least that is true for the half pot size sizing. And then as you look at the smaller sizing, I would imagine at some point you really want to start having some raises in there. But for the most part, you're just going to see a call and protect your weaker parts of your range. So we're going to see a call here, pretty standard. Turn is a complete break. So if we see another bet by Kumikon, and it's another clear spot where there's no raising range, so we see a pretty small bet. It's a bit of a weird sizing. Like I would say usually the solver would want to choose a sizing that can shove the river and play a bit more polarized. Kumikon is basically saying, hey, I got all these 2-pair hands that I'm continuously betting now to keep adding pressure to your overpairs or 1-pair holdings. But I would say intuitively or educated intuition-wise, I would think that we probably want to go for a larger sizing that would allow for river jams. But regardless, I don't think Sorvian wants to jam or race. River is a brick. Oh, this is a river jam. My bad. This is completely my mistake. I mean, it's not... I would still bet larger on the turn given that we're not going geometric. So... I think it's usually preferable here to bet a sizing, let's say like half pot and then shove river for half pot, more so than going third on the river and pot on third on the turn, pot on the river. But anyway, we do go third on the turn and then jam. Oh, no jam on the river. There's a jam and then there's a fold. Okay, so it looks like Kumikon was bluffing and didn't follow through wisely enough. And it's just a bread and butter spot for in position to only play calls against bets. Nothing too interesting. Here we see a 3-bet, bet half fold. Let's move to some bigger hands. Here we do see a 3-bet by Sages. We can shove the river though. In which hand? Queen, queen, 10, 8. Over here, 3-bet call, a bit deeper than 100 bigs to start. On the flop, you can go 1/3. Chooses to go half, which is fine. Gets called. Turn is a 3, which is obviously an amazing card for in position. The queen X hands and the flush draws are just completely cooked for out of position. So we should see just a bet going in. Different sizings are possible. Half pot, call, and then just a jam, right? Yeah, pretty standard. Next hand, we see an amazing limp by JNandez under the gun. Obviously limping, definitely part of the strategy. In an anti-game, we did see it underutilized overall, but it's also because it's kind of a headache to play post-flop and balance pre-flop and whatnot. Most of the players in the Cash Game World Championships just ended up playing mostly race. Here we see a ISO by Sorvian, and then this guy, GME, goes for a 3-bet. This is a hand that has a ton of blocker effects. Doesn't play that well in a multi-way pot, missing the... I mean, he's blocking his own flush draws, but also not very connected because it doesn't have a Jack 10. It has a Ace King Queen 10. Ace King Queen Jack is not a very connected hand. If you had a hand like Ace 10 9 8, for example, like that's a hand that has more multi-way potential. So the idea here is to 3-bet and fold against a 4-bet. In this case, he gets called and flops top 2. Not very dynamic board, but it's a board that hits both ranges very well, especially out of position. So we're going to see leads, and in position I would just check back this hand because when you get shoved, it's looking pretty bad. So let's see what happens here. We see a check. I would just check back. Okay, that's good. Or that's how I would play it. Turning the nuts. Certainly in position is going to have good chunk of ace-king. And when you have no club in your hand, I think you just want to go ahead and bet. Goes for a sizing. This is sort of a geometric sizing on a turn that allows for river jams. Call. River is the ace. So it's a bit of a weird card because it's very hard to get called if you jam. In terms of bluffing, you have to pick like ace 5-5-4 double suited or something. You have to pick 4-4-5-5 or some crazy stuff and just rip in if you want to have a chance of getting called here. So we do see the 10% bet instead of the jam. It's an interesting decision. I would say intuitively it's not really what the solver would probably do, but maybe it works well in game and is superior to the jam. Interesting enough that Sorvian decided not to lead the flop here with the nuts. I would think that there are a lot of leads on the flop, and this is definitely one of the better hands to do it, because when you have clubs yourself, it's less likely your opponent is going to bet. And with the backdoor diamond draw, you have a bunch of playability as well. So if we look into the actual sim, 3-bet pot between cutoff and button. And the flop here is the Queen Jack 8 two-toned. So the Queen and the Jack have the same suits. We're gonna choose the board where we have turns and rivers, so we can explore that a little bit as well. So out of position has a 28% lead frequency. The straight is going to lead 47% of the time on the flop. If we expand this into which straight, if we look down here, the straight with a flush draw is betting 66% of the time. So I would say like 10-10, especially when you block also other straight draws. You probably want to just, you don't want to bet with the blockers with the straight draw. That's interesting. It didn't have 10-10, by the way, 10-9-9-8. So diamonds, just like a pure lead, and then spades. We just love life. We want to lead. We want to build the pot. But Sorvian decided to go for the check. Probably in the hopes that a mergey hand like this one is betting on the flop, right? That this hand is going to bet. I don't think it would be a bet top 2 with no backdoor flush draw. So in position goes for 1/3 sizing. And if we look into the 2-pair hands here at the bottom, we can see 2-pair is betting 47% and top 2 56. So a good amount of top 2 are betting, but if you have top 2 with none of the flush draws, and you only have a straight, well, the straight draw is betting 69%, but again, we don't have an open-ender, and we don't have a backdoor flush draw, so we have one of the weaker candidates, King, Queen, Ace, King, Queen, Jack, without a diamond without a spade. So it looks to be pretty, really close between betting and checking. It's pretty much indifferent. You can see the EV difference right there is 0. So it can go either way. Obviously, if we bet, we can never fold. I thought it would be a bit more of a clear check back, but probably the straight draw is what gets us there, because if we look at ace, ace, queen, jack, which is top 2 without the straight draw, we're just going to pure check back on the flop. So it's a bit close. And the river sizing choice there for 10% is an interesting one. If you look into the actual sim, it goes check, check, turn is the 10. I would imagine on this offsuit 10, we see a ton of checks out of position, maybe full range. It's going to be a full range check, and then in position can start becoming creative, I suppose. Like we're going to see some ace X hands that are probably going to play quite aggressive, you know, like, I mean, I wonder how wide we're going to be there. We need to find some bluffs. Surely we can use some ace ace because we're going to have that a bunch. Looks like we're in a loading loop here, or what is happening. Let's go back here. Okay. So we see a check in position, then bets 43. So it's not super, super often. But what hands are we betting that have no straight and no set, let's say? I'm going to sort by the biggest EV difference. So what hands really, really like betting this turn? And it is kings. I haven't even thought about this that much, but king is obviously there. It has no value in checking because king 5-4 is just a dead hand, but we have the best blockers. So king has the most urgency in betting. And then you would use king X hands, king 7-6-5, and so on. And I think that also clears up the question, what hands are we jamming on the river? So if this goes bet call and then the river is an ace, and we see full, well, I mean, I guess we're going to see a lot of checks here, maybe full frequency. No, we're going to see some leads, it looks like. Let's go back here. So out of position, I mean, 80% check. In position, yeah, doesn't actually prefers the small sizing with some of their hands. Yeah, ace king queen jack is actually betting small in position on the river. Not 10% small, but small. And what are the bluffs? You know, those king X hands. If you have 2 kings, you just rip. But if you don't have 2 kings, you only have 1 king, you might want to go for the fake block. King 8-7-6. Might use a hand like ace 7-7-4, ace 9-5-5, ace 9-9-6, this kind of stuff. So there are some bluffs in there. I don't know what this ace queen jack 5 is all about. It's like a super thin value bet. But yeah, you're gonna come with the 1/3. So the small sizing actually kind of a thing, not 10%, but yeah. Okay, next hand, 3-bet call, full pot size bet on the king 6-4. So we have the 6 blocker. I'm curious about this one. Are we just forcing in the money right there? Just muscling it in. Out of position has a 25% lead, and then in position would only go 1/3. So not really the texture we prefer potting. Ace queen 6 goes for the bet on the flop, and I suppose based on the backdoor flush draws, we decide if we want to get it in or not. No, just like all of them will continue and basically get the money in. So that also means that we can profitably pot the flop and just take that line. If we were to use another set of sims, the classic sims right there, The classic sims have 2 bet sizings. So we can use king 6-5, which is better connected though. So if you look at the 2 bet size solution, you definitely have some potting hands right here from in position. And yeah, it could definitely be fine. It's going to be a profitable pot size bet on the flop. Okay. Over here, GME with a 3-bet gets called. Bet on the flop. Check, check, turn. Check, check, river. Ends up losing against this one. Squeeze spot, we're not going to look into that. This could look interesting. This is a small one. Let's look into this one. 3-bet here by Sorvia and call. King 9-4. Goes for the half pot size and then continue. I mean, it's not going to fold. Speedy G with a 3-bet against Sages. Nice flop. 1/3. Check, check. Half pot. Makes sense. Nice hand to 3-bet with. Top pair, got a flush draw. Like, it's supposed to be like 1/3. Half pot is good as well. Here we have ace 9-9-3. Sages with a 3-bet. And he gets called. Flops top set. Half pot. Turn is a 6. I mean, deuce 5 is very unlikely, and he's unblocking the hearts. So you want to just keep betting. Our opponent rips. I think it's probably better for his opponent to bet 1/3 on the turn if he wants to lead and keep in more bluffs that way. And make the overpairs more indifferent to continue. Yeah, this is pretty spewy, I would think. Check call flop is... So check call flop is good, but then just pushing the 6. Can't really see that. I mean, it's probably profitable, but it's an interesting hand. It definitely feels a bit spewy, but I'm going to mark it out for later review. Over here, Rainbow Aces by Speedy finds a 3-bet. They're deep stacked, so we're going to see a bet on the flop and a call. Amazing turn and taking it down. Makes sense. What else can we do here? What happens here? Canary and Spy against the Nizzles. We raise. Okay, it's a 4-bet spot. Nothing to see there. Over here, Speedy G goes for the 3-bet, gets called. Weird flop. So this flop has a lot less leads, but definitely some leads. Because of the 2 diamonds, got to be careful for out of position to lead here too much. And I would say in position just wants to check back and see the turn. Makes a straight. And is going to call, no question. Runs into 10-10-4 deuce. Pretty weak hand to open with. Especially the 4 deuce, not that clean. 3-bet pot. Probably going to see a pot size bet on the flop. Goes for the check back. Turns the nuts. Goes for half. Check, check, river. Yeah, seems interesting for out of position to check the river there without blocking any of the pairs. Could be interesting lead, especially with the aggressive image. Aggressive 3-bet here, probably against a recreational player here. Speedy G with ace 8-5-5, flops the nuts, bets third, check, check, calls third, and wins. 3-bet. It looks like I had an auto rebuy issue here. I'm all in for 10 big blinds or 11 big blinds. Flops trips. All right, we ended up shopping, or I won, not sure. This one is probably more interesting. Raise, 3-bet, 100 big blinds deep, 4-bet call, pot all in. They chop. So ace jack 6-5, ace jack 6-5. It's an interesting one. Is this something that we want to see there? Seems to be a bit wide, the ace jack 6-5. All right. Here we have Silk Brother finds the jack 7-6-5, 3-bets the button versus EP. It's a good hand. I mean, it's a good spot. Probably want to have some fold equity pre. I wonder like what the EV is going to be there for 3-betting. So it's actually not a 3-bet. The EV difference is not super large. It looks like you're looking more for something like this, the jack 8-7-6, or maybe a hand like the king 9-7-6, something like this. It seems like the jack and the 7 are too disconnected. But anyway, we do see a call. Kind of a weird flop. We have the bottom end of a wrap, but the jack 7, sort of a middling straight draw. But I think because of the 2 backdoor flush draws, we're just going to pot. And the texture in itself is just a potting texture. Money goes in, runs into the ace queen 10-8 with no backdoor flush draw. So it's an interesting spot. I think out of position on the flop, just wants to call. Shoving seems like a bit of an overplay there. We'll see. So say we have a 3-bet pot between EP and the button on 9-8-3. So you can already see based on the sizings over here, it's going to be pot for out of position, pot for in position. Out of position checks. And then we have we don't really have this hand in our range. We could have something similar-ish. But anyway, we pot. Ace queen 10-8, yeah, and even with a backdoor flush draw, just wants to call. Interesting enough, actually, without a backdoor flush draw, we are actually folding. We're actually folding, so let's see how big the mistake here is to jam. It's actually going to be something like a 8 big blind mistake to check rip the flop here against the pot size c-bet. So you can see if you activate 0% combos, this option right there, hands that wouldn't take the line show up there, and then you can see what their EV is going to be for that move. So in this instance, if we have the ace queen 10-8, no backdoor flush draw, the EV is about -8 big blinds per hand. So sizable mistake there to continue against the pot size bet. The preflop range is too strong. Maybe this is a good one to mark as well for later review. Here we got Mr. Veiny VD with an... Well, he's not going to be 3-betting. This is a 4-bet pot, yeah. Okay. Then here we got Happy Sally 3-betting against myself. We make the call, flopping the nuts. We play check, call, check, check, and check, check. Pretty standard, I would think, from both players. Ace 9-8-5, 2 backdoor flush draws and a backdoor or multiple backdoor straight draws. I don't think we have any business in folding on the flop there. So it's going to be cutoff versus button. Let's go back here. It's going to be cutoff versus button on ace jack deuce. Here's the half pot size bet. Oh, it's rainbow. It's this one. So we're not supposed to have the hand in a proper range, but a similar one, ace 9, 8, 6 is going to be here. And whenever we have a backdoor flush draw, we have a pure call. Is that right? Yes. 100% call. And I decided not to bluff on the river with ace 9, 8, 5. I think it's pretty good. Although it makes you think that what hand do we want to bluff on the river, I suppose. Obviously some kings are going to be in there. Probably want to have some sort of a jack, sort of a 10 blocker or some kings. I mean, the reality is also my opponent's preflop range is very strong on this board. So we shouldn't be bluffing that many hands because our value betting threshold is actually really high. This is a pretty aggressive 3-bet, ace, king, queen, 3 against myself. Playing deep stack though. I make the call, flop goes check, check. Lead by myself on the turn large. I think this makes a lot of sense. I'm basically pressuring a ton of aces or queen X, pocket kings. Yep, seems good. Wonder if out of position in my shoes I could block the river, but I think it would be a bit aggressive. I think it's pretty clean, but we can mark it and have a look at it. Over here we have a 3-bet by Veni Vidi against Kennedy. We see a call. The flop is pretty interesting because only one straight is present, the 9-7, and it's not a very likely straight for each player. That being said, the board is so dry, I would imagine out of position can definitely have some leads here. Quite a few leads, in fact. So we see MP versus button. 10-8-6. I would probably guess like 40% leads. Yeah, 43% leads here for out of position for the half pot size sizing. Let's see how this hand is going to play out. Check, check. Seems standard. In position goes for 1/3. Like top pair, if we have backdoor flush draws, we can start working in a bet. But without the backdoor flush draw, I think it would be just too marginal. Even though we have top pair and the not straight draw, it looks like we're really pretty much indifferent between either option, so checking back is fine. Turn is a jack. We see a large bet. At this point, we just want to call. We are not looking to get in a stack. Yep, seems good. So it goes check, check. The turn is a jack, introducing the flush draw. Out of position goes for 3/4. It makes sense. And then in position has this hand without the spades. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. Actually, spicy stuff is happening. Spicy stuff. Spicy stuff is going on here. It looks like there is an appetite for raising. Yeah. It's at least a possibility. However, in this particular hand, we are deeper on the turn. We still have 114, 115 big blinds. So, I mean, it's a straight board without a flush draw. So that makes it a very dry board. If someone has 9-7, you know, a ton of the 3-betting range is almost dead. Anyway, on the turn, it looks like raising is actually a possibility, preferred with a spade blocker, but it's also possible without a spade blocker. It certainly also comes down to how aggressive the out of position player is going to probe the turn. Are they going to find some like spade flushes that are maybe not so intuitive that are going to bet fold the turn? So we can actually look into this for a second. So say we are in this node, the flop goes check, check. We're going to jump into training mode. Like, what kind of hands does out of position have to start leading here? Surely not this hand. We have the bottom two. It's just going to get super weird when you start betting. Oh, this hand is also a bet. Okay. Okay, so this kind of stuff, this is the kind of stuff I'm not really expecting there. I guess we're really aggressively trying to deny equity, some equity, playability. Surprising hand class there. Here we have the straight. I mean, I just want to bet and put in some money. Ace King 5-3 is one of those hands where we don't block actually any of the good stuff. And if we get jammed, it's a pretty big disaster. Not gut shot, not flush draw. So I would just check. Similar stuff going on here. Ace King 10-7, a mixed bag. If we bet, we have to get it in. We block line 7. I'm really not sure. Probably check. Check. 8-7-5-5. Weird one. Pretty weird. If we bet and get ripped, very awkward with the low open-ender and the low flush draw. I check. Yeah, so this hand wants to bet very clearly with a bunch of blockers and then fold against the jam, obviously. So that is interesting. So out of position has to find these kinds of hands. I think this hand probably wants to bet. We have Jack, 10, and a 9 blocker. The river play is awkward, but we want to bet, I think. No, okay, so that's interesting. The river playability is too important here. That's interesting. This hand is super trash. 7, 6, 5, 4. With 1 spade blocker. This is going to be one of the bluffs. This hand just doesn't have anything working as far as blockers are concerned. Ace, Queen, 8-6, no spades. Bottom 2, check and see what happens. Ace, King, 4-4. The special thing about this hand is the 3 spades in our hand, so kind of power blockers to some of the stuff. Don't know. It could be one of the bet folds. It could be. Yeah, it is. It's partly because of the 3 spades in our hand. It's kind of special. And this is just a check. We have a ton of showdown. It's not really necessary to do anything. The nuts with an open-ender. Let's start betting. Good times. Set and not gutter. Bet. Complete air. Check. So if you want to find more leads, by the way, we can also change. Actually, it is already the hand selection is already balanced, which means we're going to see an equal amount of checks and bets. This is a strange one. We have a wrap and a 7-high flush draw, but absolutely no showdown. So maybe we bet fold, which is super awkward, but I guess, yeah. Here we also have a wrap, but no spade blocker. I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable with this one. Yeah, it's a check. So I would say most of the leads here, given the accuracy of 87%, are pretty natural. It's not really... this hand checks. 10, 8, 9, 7. I guess the river playability is just too messed up. Might actually check jam this hand on the turn. Say... 10, 9, 8, 7. Yeah, river playability there is important. So if we have 10, 9, 8, 7, 10, 9, 7. Yeah, it looks like we prefer just check raising all in the turn then. So back to the hand. Pre-flop seems standard. On the flop, standard. On the turn, raise possible. River is the ace of spades. I mean, we're very unhappy, obviously, with this hand. And we do see a block. I mean, it definitely requires some creativity here. It requires creativity here for out of position to be bluffing, and sort of the disgusting thing is that they might even value bet king queen. They might value bet queen 9, 9-7, obviously the flushes. We need to find some folds. I would say exploitatively, it could be a good spot to find a tight fold. I don't think Veni is going to fold, but we'll see. He's going to call, and it is the nuts. Flop the nuts, bet the turn, and river the nuts. Interesting sizing choice. I mean, it ended up being a great choice because Veni had a hand that I'm pretty sure he folds against a larger bet. Here we have a hand against myself. So Veni 3-bets me with a beautiful ace-jack 10-9. This is 10-20. This is actually, this is a pretty crazy hand. This is one of the crazy. I would need to make a separate video about hands like these, just to show you like how aggressive the challenge actually ended up playing. You know, I think a lot of people don't really understand the level of aggression that was present at 2K. So 3-bet pot. I'm out of position, right? I check the flop, and Veni goes for the small bet. He basically has a worthless hand, and the board is disconnected enough, I would think, where this bet can definitely make money. But anyway, I make the call. The turn is a 10. It goes check, and I mean, this turn bet is pretty strange because it's not really supposed to happen. In position is basically incentivized to be polarizing more and just saying like, hey, look, I'm going to try to get a stack in and use some sort of geometric sizing. Is there room for a smaller sizing choice? I guess there is, based on the small sizing on the flop. So given how tiny the flop bet was, which was a quarter pot size bet, you could say that out of position has a other like one pair hands that are now being challenged, basically the king, with this small sizing. But it's weird because if I do have a king, I connect to the 10 very often, and I will just call given the price. If I have a flush, I will call. So I don't really see like what hand. I don't think I would fold any better hand on the turn against this particular sizing. If you would bet half or 2/3, certainly there are hands I would fold for sure. But against this sizing, I basically don't really fold anything. So maybe he's trying to set up some sort of bet turn, knowing I will never fold, and then just bluff the river in case he doesn't improve. So the river is a king. So that's pretty bad news for in position because I could have made a boat. And I'm actually coming out potting. So that's where the hand ends, right? You would think that's where the hand ends. But we face a jam. And I actually don't have king 10 in this hand. But I was just like, listen, man, I don't know what happened in this hand, but I'm not folding. And we end up having king 8. Obviously also relatively easy call. But you would think at any other stake, when this river sequence happens, where I pot and get min raise jammed, if you have king 8, you would think like, I guess I'm going to run into king 10. And I think what happened in this hand is there's a decent chance that Veni thought that I'm bluffing a king, just a lonely king. And given that he has a 10 blocker, is blocking king 10, it's pretty unlikely I have king 8, although possible. And if I happen to have deuces or pocket 8s, it's also kind of a gross spot. Kind of. I mean, I would have to put him on a king that then jams and plays his way on the flop in the turn. It's an overall super weird hand, given specifically the sizing choices that he took on the flop in the turn. It changes not only his range, or maybe it doesn't, but it changes primarily my range. Because he bet so small on the flop and turn, I'm still going to have lonely king X. I'm going to have some like 10-8 that is playing this way. Him jamming the river, I mean, he's not beating the lonely king. He does beat 10-8. So I think he basically was saying, well, I think you have either a lonely king, you might have pocket eights or pocket deuces that might fold against a jam, and I do block king 10, and I do block 10, 10, I suppose, but yeah. So pretty crazy hand. We ended up winning a nice 5K pot there. So that was a hand that I need to mark out for a different category of review. Okay. All right. Here, raise 3-bet. We have a small bet. It looks like he really likes this sort of denial of equity line. I mean, this is kind of a weird hand again. Okay, let's do one more. So raise 3-bet and call. Pretty standard so far by Canary and Spy. Flop should be a check back. They're playing a bit deeper. SPR 4. Turn is a 7. Check again. So now he has 2-pair, nut gutter, and queen eye flush draw. The check back note, it's a weird one. He doesn't block Jack 8. He doesn't block 10-10. I don't know. Maybe it's just a check spot. I would play it as a check. I was just thinking if the solver might want to start squeezing out some value here. And the river is very nice because the reality of the spot is that it is a checked down pot and you end up with 3-pair and a straight blocker holding the king. So this is just a snap call scenario in the right pool, right? If you play against the biggest nets, then this is kind of a weird spot. But against good players, both players realize that we checked it down, which means the ranges are very wide, and you need to find some hands to call with. And holding 3-pair and a straight blocker is like close to the top of your range. Ace King 9-3 here probably makes a ton of sense. I mean, he doesn't love holding the ace, I would think, because he wants his opponent to have aces or Ace King himself. But at the same time, it's also a bit difficult to find the right bluffs. You probably want to hold a king or a jack. Jack is preferable. You probably do not want to hold ace king specifically. So it's a tricky one. Are you supposed to just give up with ace high? Maybe, probably, if you happen to have... He also has a 9, so there's a chance he can win at least. Ace King 9, yeah, seems like pretty aggressive. I'm going to mark this hand out. It's an interesting, it's a note that is difficult to play well because you do check it down and you need to find the right candidates to bluff with there. So yeah. Okay, so this is going to wrap it up for the day. 90 minutes, about 3-bet pots in position. Hopefully this format was interesting to you, where we are mixing different players and how they play 3-bet pots in position and compare this with GTO. If so, and you want to see more of that, leave a like, leave a comment, even better. Subscribe to the channel, and a lot more of this content is obviously going to be available in the PLO Mastermind, where I make the bulk of my coaching videos. So check out PLOmastermind.com, and obviously check out our brandly new designed platform, PLO Trainer, which we have used today, also available on PLOmastermind.com. With that being said, we're out for the day, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. This has been JNandez. GG.